Gary has spent most of his career in financial services and recently as a management consultant at the Boston Consulting Group in Jakarta. At BCG, he covered both banks and FMCG clients across Southeast Asia. Prior to BCG, Gary worked at the Citigroup's Institutional Clients Group in New York, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Gary holds an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management in Illinois and a double degree in finance and international business from Georgetown University in DC. Gary also is an avid mixologist. Do you know what it is? Yeah. At heart, and is a licensed bartender in the state of Illinois. So after this, we're gonna have some wine made by him. Okay. He enjoys a good game of pool, some craft manga sparring, and casual video gaming. Let's give him a round of applause.
All right, so let's stay in this slide first. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for coming to this event. Before we start, I think I just want to check the audience. How many of you are startups? If you can, like, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, about like less than half. And the rest of you are angel investors, I would imagine, or some sort of investors. Yes. Okay, great. Awesome, so I think the material that I'm planning to cover should fit the needs for both of you, and I hope it'll be useful in some way. So if we could go to the next slide. So you may have heard about this a lot in the past year, right? A lot of pundits in the US were talking about slowdown in investments or reduction in investments, etc., etc. And you know, a lot of people are saying, brace yourself, winter is coming. But if you go to the next slide, right, what about this year? I mean, I would think, yes, it may be a little bit frothy, but a winter bubble, really. And I hope to cover the next 15 minutes regarding this topic. Whether or not we think, or I think, that in Indonesia we have this bubble per se. So if we go to the next slide. In order to keep both investors and startups on the same page, I'd like to first cover the basics, right? So let's get back to basics first. Next slide. From an investor perspective, at least from me representing Convergence Ventures, venture capital fund here in Indonesia, Startup Consideration 101, we basically look into 3 primary dimensions when looking into the investability of a particular startup. First is the market, second is the founder's team, and third is the traction. So I think a nice combination of these 3 will hopefully yield our little unicorn there. And you know, that happened in the US, and we really hope that something will happen here in Indonesia as well. Next. So, what do I mean by market size and or founder's team, right? The market size, you can analogize it as being a fish in a pond, right? You're either a big fish in a small pond, or you're a small fish in a big pond with the opportunity to grow to become a big fish in a big pond, right? So that's what we want to be. We want to invest in companies that have a lot of room to grow, and that's very important. On the founder side, I like to imagine it as the engine of a car. No matter how flashy your car is, James Bond, Aston Martin, if you're a 1500cc engine, you're just gonna be a 1500cc engine. You know, 0 to 60 in like 5-6 seconds, or maybe 10 seconds. But if you're a legitimate Lamborghini engine, doesn't matter what chassis you have, it will be great no matter what. I mean, you'll be able to run fast, your torque will be awesome, etc., etc. Right? So, based on my experience in the US as well, there are typically 2 different sides of philosophy that investors take. One is they believe fully in the market size. It doesn't matter who the team is, I can build a team, as long as the market is big enough to capture. for example, e-commerce in Indonesia, you see there are multiple players right now in the market, and some have phenomenal teams, some does not, and they still survive. The other philosophy or mindset really is the team, the founder, right? That's what people believe will drive the company. And the ability to pivot is what some would consider, arguably, the difference between a great entrepreneur and a good entrepreneur. So, you know, those are different types of philosophy. But, I feel like here in Indonesia, unfortunately, I think a good combination of both would be the ideal situation. But if not, then I'm kind of like leaning towards the founder side. That said, right, it really depends on which stage of investment you play in as well. Which brings me to the third slide. Let me talk a little bit about this slide. This shows that there are different stages of startup investing. You know, a life cycle of a company starts from ideation stage all the way to late stage, right? You can see basically when you're in idea stage, you get a lot of grants and friends and family, right? Then you hit angel stage where you've launched your beta, you've tried one or two different transactions. Then in Indonesia, we see a lot of activities happening here, seed and also Series A, Series B. Now, as the company evolves, the risks related to investing in such companies also theoretically declines because, for example, when you have more sales down the road, the chance of you going bankrupt is probably a lot less than somebody who just thought about a brilliant idea in a coffee shop. That's the idea. And then here is where private equity and public markets play. So why is this important? It just sets up my discussion on why and what could affect valuations and investor consideration in valuing a company here in Indonesia. Which brings me to the next slide. So before we go to Indonesia, what's going on with the rest of the world? This is what I would like to cover. First, nobody can deny that global macroeconomic trends in the world. In 2016, it's a bit cautious in general. We got wars in the Middle East, immigrants or refugees going to Europe. Commodity prices have been weak, right? Oil prices below 30. Who knows what that indicator means? The U.S. election. What happens if Donald Trump wins? You know, maybe a civil war. Who knows? Right? I mean, just joking on that. But and lastly, China is weakening, right? We all know that, and that affects, quite significantly affects global demand. For example, even in Indonesia or all of our coal mining activities, etc., are greatly affected by this reduction in demand. And now we also look into the fact that US VC fundraising activities have been somewhat cooling down. This data that is compiled by an organization in the US have been claiming that fundraising activity has been reaching pre-recession level, right? As you can see right there in 2015, it's almost about the same as when it was in 2005. The point of this slide is just to explain the fact that, I think numbers are showing that things are cooling down a little bit. You look at the public markets, and things are not quite fine and dandy either. You look at NASDAQ, LinkedIn, Apple, Twitter, they're not doing swell compared to 3 or 4 months ago. Even if you go to Finance Google right now and you look at the data as of February, it's still not as good as what it was a couple months ago, right? So, it brings up questions in terms of private valuation. Can we still maintain the crazy 40 billion Uber valuation that we've been seeing in the past 2 years? The organization also covers some surveys, right, regarding investor sentiment. And what they found out of 150 or so VCs that they surveyed, VCs in the US may be not as bullish as what they were before. Again, last year, right, in terms of valuation, people are expecting that valuation is not going to be as crazy as what it was back in 2014 and 2015. But what about Indonesia? Right? That's all in the US and in the world. Oh man, it looks like a freaking storm is coming, right? But what about Indonesia? Now I'd like to bring the light that, in Indonesia is actually, fundamentals are quite promising, quite bullish, right? Which is why me as an investor, we want to invest in Indonesia. That's why our fund mandate is revolved around the Indonesia mandate, right? We got good GDP at least 2 years ago. I guess nowadays it's a bit weaker, but hey, bear with me, right? We have a young population, infrastructure is there. I just met an old friend of mine who's saying that, yeah, the tools of the infrastructure to support a startup here is already in Indonesia, and I totally agree with that, right? We're a very social population as well. Even that bias, I still think that e-commerce still have room here in Indonesia.
Thank you. One more? No? Okay, hang on. We have something for you.
Thank you, thank you.